I like all kinds of entertainment, but one of the things that really lit my fuse when I was getting into it was puppeteering. I really enjoyed amazing creations by the Jim Henson Company and their Creature Shop, and I just love the beautiful art of making make-believe things a reality. With funny voices and unique skills, puppeteers can really, change your day, for lack of a better way of putting it. And of course, we all have our favorites, and even here on this platform and around different spots on the internet, you have the Cotton Connection with Jolly and all of the things that Snowdub does over there, and some other places as well. I've even been known to dabble a bit myself, and I consider building a puppet a very fun activity, and I suggest doing it. And if you have little ones, whether they be yours or borrowed from family members, it's a great thing to try to do together, and especially if you learn how to do it properly. You have to, take some very, very strict precautions when you're working with some of the, solvents and materials, because pretty much everything you're doing is synthetic and maybe not the best to inhale. But beyond the puppet talk and proper construction thereof, there is a story that I found a little bit interesting coming out of the Hollywood Reporter, and of course it's directly related to the Muppets, Sesame Street, and the Jim Henson Company. You ready? Here we go. So it seems that there is a little bit of conflict at the Jim Henson Company, and rightfully so if you believe the perspective that's presented in the following article. From the Hollywood Reporter, it says, puppet makers rise up against the puppet masters. It seems that puppet wranglers are trying to form a union when they haven't been able to. The puppet masters, or the puppeteers themselves, have been able to be in a union since the late 50s, courtesy of Ronald Reagan, which we'll get to later here in the story. But these folks are trying to push for unionization and to get some safer working conditions. It seems on the first day, and this is an anecdote, so we'll read it as such. On the first day on set in 2019, a puppet wrangler on Disney's Earth to Ned, that's a co-production with the Jim Henson Company. The particular person in question was told by another more senior wrangler not to address one of the show's puppeteers, Kevin Clash, directly. Amongst other puppeteers, he's known to be very bubbly and kind. He recalls being warned of Clash. But when it came to wranglers, I was told he tends to be a bit condescending and nasty. And of course, he goes on to relate an encounter that turned out to be just that. There seem to be only about 25 people in the world right now who work as full-time wranglers, and they are currently seeking union representation, as I mentioned before. This has eluded them since the job first emerged with the rise of Sesame Street and, of course, the Muppet Show in the late 1970s. A puppet wrangler is essentially a builder. He also works on the set, or she. Talent coordinator for a puppet, basically, is what the job is described as by a wrangler who's working on, or has worked on Comedy Central shows such as Crank Yankers, which is not a Henson production, by the way. You have to make sure that the puppet's in the right outfit, holding any props they need to be holding, and rigged to do any specialty moves. And that's where it comes into proper armature building, which again, is one of those fun things to try to do or figure out if you're a first-time puppet builder, but I'll keep going. And then you are standing by to monitor while they're filming to make sure that everything looks good, because puppets do break, they tear, things fall apart, you have to constantly maintain them. It seems that Clash is best known, and this is the puppeteer, for creating and voicing Sesame Street character Elmo. In 2012, 4 men filed a civil lawsuit against Clash, accusing him of having bad things with them when they were minors. Wow, that's terrible. Leading Clash, who denied the claims, to resign from Sesame Street Workshop with a very heavy heart. One of the accusers alleged that at age 16, he'd attended some party and bad things happen. I don't even want to get into that. That's not the part of the story we're here for. Of course, that's an awful thing to be accused of, especially if the allegations were true, but the cases were all dismissed because the 6-year statute of limitations had expired. Well, that's not great. Anyway, Clash kept a low profile for several years, eventually resurfacing in Los Angeles, I guess hooked back up with Brian and Lisa Henson, according to the story. The fabrication of everything that you see on Sesame Street still falls to the Jim Henson Company, so they continue to build and repair Big Bird, Cookie Monster, and the Count. So that's still something that they're doing, which of course they manage the wrangling staff for those characters as well, according to the article. Lisa and her brother Brian brought Clash back to work on various projects, the R-rated version of Happy Time Murders, for example, and then the 2019 Netflix series The Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance, and of course now Disney's Earth to Ned. So there you go. It looks like he's also recently worked on the Fraggle Rock Back to the Rock series for Apple TV. Interesting indeed. And, you know, it goes on to say lots of other things about this particular person. And like anything in this person's background, if true, if these allegations are accurate, I'm not sure I would have signed up to work with them, but let's set that aside for now. Let's go back to the issue at hand. It's not just their mistreatment, but essentially lack of unionization means that Wranglers have no access to the guild-provided healthcare system, and that's a real problem. Let me tell you why. A typical fleece and foam puppet, which is basically what they're made out of, the kind that is generally associated with the Muppets, is about 90% petrochemical materials, which we talked about at the beginning of the video, meaning of course that they're derived from processing petroleum and natural gas. This includes foam and fleece, but the glue is the most toxic element, and believe me, I've worked with this stuff they're about to talk about. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, among such conditions that can be caused by these chemicals is a disease called toluene-induced leukoencephalopathy. Holy cow, I feel like drunk 3PO trying to pronounce words there. Which can cause the degradation of motor function and cognitive impairment. Barge, which is a primary adhesive that you tend to use when you're doing these things, is toluene based, and it's highly regulated by OSHA. Creators can still get non-toluene based barge, but for the adhesive quality that you're looking for in these puppets, people still continue to use this. There are horror stories associated with this particular adhesive and fabrication going back decades, including strokes and cancer and all kinds of other stuff, of course. It isn't, however, the most dangerous solvent that's actually favored by the craft. In fact, they used to use materials like acetone that they did not even know were as bad as they were for the human condition. And you would end up with toxicity levels through, skin contact or vapors that would seriously debilitate you later in life. In fact, lead to sometimes very early demises in your 40s, which is, of course, related here in the stories. Now, of course, OSHA's on top of all of these things now, and you still are using some of these chemicals to work on these things, but that leads us back to unionization and the fact that anybody working in the industry doesn't have health care. Well, at least not union provided or on-set provided healthcare, which should be, I would think, part of the job. According to the article, there are still people that don't use respirators, which I use when I'm manufacturing anything like that or working with chemicals or plastics or whatever, because I want to not, expire early, of course. But among lifetime builders, a culture of recklessness in handling toxic materials still persists. And of course, there are freelance wranglers out there that have never attended, according to the article, safety training and or been informed about safety protocols at the company. They were left up to the wranglers themselves. Basically, they're pushing very hard for unionization through SAG-AFTRA. One of the questions that the Hollywood Reporter asked during the course of creating this article was this: what are Henson's safety training and protocols? And of course, a lawyer for the company replies saying, the Jim Henson Company and its businesses maintain rigorous safety standards and employ industry best practices, which it has been doing successfully for decades. Specifically, Jim Henson's Creature Shop exemplary track record for quality, employee satisfaction, and safety. Not sure that was an answer to the question. It was an answer to a question, just not that one. Adding to frustrations, multiple Wranglers complained that builds for Henson shows like Fraggle Rock, Back to the Rock are chaotic, underfunded, and short-staffed. One Wrangler says, when I arrived at my last build for Henson, they'd been working for 1 week on a job budgeted for 2 months. Yet they were insisting that the company wasn't out of money. It raises a real fundamental question. How and where is the money being spent? How can the company be out of money if it hasn't built anything? It's a good question. One of the bigger issues seems to be what guild would they belong to, because it's hard for one group to want to claim us, says Burson, a person who is a Wrangler, because we do handle the costumes on puppets, we do handle the props on the puppets, we do special effects, we have our foot in so many different departments. I think it just falls under the concept of tradition. This is how it's always been. Well, that's going to be a real issue. Puppeteers were brought into the Screen Actors Guild in 1959, as I mentioned before, by Ronald Reagan. He persuaded Bob Baker, the marionette master who worked on films like Disney's Bedknobs and Broomsticks, that puppets were performers. Well, of course they are. According to Kevin Carlson, who is the co-chair of the SAG-AFTRA National Puppeteers Committee, says Wranglers might belong in a union, just not his. If they want to unionize, there's a union for them. IATSE, it's a craft union. It's under costuming. I mean, it just seems so straightforward. Well, they do more than costuming, and they sometimes are performers. They wear a lot of hats, so I disagree with this person. I understand he wants to not have them in that particular union. It puts them above the line. Sounds like he wants them below the line. Other industry, or others in the industry, puppeteers and Wranglers alike, agree that Wranglers, along with IATSE's props union, Local 44, but a faction of Wranglers feel their specialty is not sufficiently defined by any existing technical guild. And that may be true. I don't know. The problem is these people are going to continue to struggle with this until somebody decides to claim them or they become their own thing. And then the decision will be, are they at a performer level and above the line? Are they not? Are they more technical and they belong in the background below the line? I don't know. It would ultimately make a lot of decisions going forward a little easier, but for the time being, there's still a lot of finger pointing, and some of it's at the Henson Company itself. Henson is not anti-union, says a lawyer for the Henson Company. Neither is Brian Henson or Lisa Henson. I can't imagine they would be. Their dad was a very much people person, if you know any stories about him. Henson follows and respects all labor laws. The company does not tolerate abusive behavior. Wranglers and Puppeteers both play important roles in Henson Productions. The company respects the right of employees to unionize. So I guess at this point, it's on them. It even sounds like there are some puppeteers out there that are advocating for bringing the Wranglers in with them. And they say this: I don't see any need to separate the skill sets, says our Barbarian and Trolls, Massey. That's the person that is speaking here, I guess. It's often really handy to have people who perform actually know how things are built. I find things get broken less often if the performer has a sensitivity to how the puppet is constructed. And that makes a lot of sense. Regardless, I think it's important that they start to get some representation somewhere, because it sounds like if with the health issues that come along with doing this particular type of job, they could use some health insurance that they aren't 100% responsible for. With that being said, I have to ask you, what are your thoughts on this particular issue? Do you care? Is this kind of an industry outside interest for anybody? I like the talk about practical effects, puppetry, marionette work, any kinds of special effects out there, especially if they're practical. That kind of seems to be my jam, outside of obviously the observation of the business of entertainment. So if that's something you're interested in, please let me know. Do you think that these particular groups of folks, the Wranglers, should be represented as puppeteers? I think they should be, but that's my opinion. Or do you think they should have something of their own? Or do you think they should fall into a different category like costuming or similar? Hard to say. I do believe that they should be respected as an above-the-line employee if they often do the actual performances themselves with the puppets. It only seems fair. But hey, what are your thoughts? And if you have anything else to say, do use that comment section down below. Of course, support other independent creators out there, because they can certainly use your help on any of the platforms that you'll find us on, whether it be YouTube or Rumble or Odyssey or anywhere else, BitChute, places like that. And be sure to subscribe to their content, share it out there. Be sure to hit the like button, that actually helps. And of course, the comments are key because they actually drive engagement. So thank you for doing that for me and also for them. You can also support some channels who offer things like merchandise, like I do. I have a whole couple of stores that you can choose from, and pretty soon 3 or 4 more on the way. A lot of different items that the boss has been working on fairly diligently, and some bigger plans for down the road. So do check those out from time to time. And hey, arm yourself with a piece of CultureCasino gear. And with that being said, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, wash your hands, of course, because it's good hygiene. It actually is. And until next time, bye.
Thanks for visiting today. Be sure you're subscribed and hit that for alerts.
Yay!
Of course, like and share all of the videos that you can, as it helps with the algorithm. Have a great day.